let's talk some quarterbacks. Now, Steve, you broke some big news on Julian Lewis on Friday that there is a new team in the mix for the five-star quarterback out of Carrollton, Georgia. And it's not a team, it wasn't a team that I was expecting to jump in the race. So, Steve, break down what you got on Julian Lewis right now.
Well, Julian Lewis is going to return to Indiana for a second time this year. He was originally going to take an official visit to Georgia the weekend of May 31st. That visit opened up with Ryan Montgomery committing to Georgia. So he filled it with Indiana. He was there earlier this spring. There is not a coach in college football that Julian Lewis known longer than Indiana quarterback coach Tino Sunseri. He camped in Tallahassee when he was 8 years old, which also goes to show you the vision that Julian Lewis and his family had for where he is now. This was a long time coming. A lot of work poured into this for Julian Lewis, a Gatorade Player of the Year finalist, the Gatorade State Player of the Year in the state of Georgia. Back when he was 8 years old, he was putting in the work to become the quarterback he is today. And one of those places he went and learned was Florida State, where he got some time with Tino Sunseri. They've kept in touch. If Tino Sunseri was still at Alabama, I think Julian Lewis would be committed to Alabama right now, and he would be their quarterback in the 2025 class. He is instead committed to USC right now, playing set to potentially play for Lincoln Riley and that coaching staff with what he's done with quarterbacks, not only being first-round draft picks, but the number one pick and the Heisman Trophy winner. If you start for Lincoln Riley, you can almost lock those accolades in for you down the road. But Indiana, they're in it because of that relationship with Tino Sunseri, and we'll see if they can make a move on, first and foremost, USC. There's a lot of momentum around Auburn right now. He's going to take an official visit June 14th to the Plains, return there. He visited there a couple times this spring. I view them as the biggest challenger to flip him from USC. And then you have Colorado. They're an interesting program in this one, too, because he's already been there a couple times this year. June 21st, official visit to Colorado, chance to start right away. The lights that surround that Colorado program, the media interest, Coach Shermer and his offense and pro background are some of the things that excite Julian Lewis and his family about Colorado. But Indiana fans should be super excited. They're getting one of the best quarterbacks in the country on campus. You look at their recruiting class, they have a sneaky good secondary in the fold right now, guys that I think can match up with and play against some of the best receivers in the country that you're going to see at places like Ohio State. So Indiana's program's on the rise. They're hoping to continue to show that to Julian Lewis when he comes back up May 31st weekend.
All right, so it looks like Julian Lewis's official visit schedule set, and the last one is going to be at the end of June to Colorado. I know he's committed to USC, so it's not like he needs to make a decision, but do you think he shuts down his recruitment, even if he remains at USC? Do you think he comes out and makes some sort of statement after official visits like, this is where I'm locked into?
Well, I think that anytime a prospect flips on his commitment, it's always something that could potentially happen again. I don't say that negatively. It's just what the process is. If he sticks with USC through this wave of official visits, I still think that proximity allows him to attend games in the fall at some of these other schools still that he was high on. And certainly seasons are played, so that could change the dynamic of any recruitment. So it's hard for me to close the book on a prospect. We have some prospects out there right now that have said that they're 100% shut down and not taking any other visits, that are still keeping some schools warm via the phone lines. So I'm always on guard for future visits and future flips. And look, these guys only get to go through the process once. The information changes daily. Personalities change, coaches change, seasons are played. There's so many moving parts in a recruitment here. But Julian Lewis, in a perfect world, he wants to make a final decision going into his final high school season and then enroll early at that school in December.
Yeah. All right. Julian Lewis committed to USC. Now, with TJ Lateef coming off the board, there are now only 3 uncommitted quarterbacks in the top 25. I want to talk about one of them right now, Madden Iamaleava. He's out of Long Beach, California, and with Lateef off the board, what's the latest with Madden?
Well, Chad Simmons, our colleague, director of recruiting here at On3, has kind of been out in front of this one for us. Has UCLA in a really good spot for Madden right now as we head into the summer. The Bruins have not had a top 25 recruiting class, Josh, since 2018, but you look at some of the guys that they're in on, including Madden, they got a chance to push for that this cycle. He would be a big pickup, and I think he would be someone that would attract some of these other blue chippers and high-profile West Coast guys to UCLA.
All right, let's switch gears here for a moment and talk a little 2026 quarterback recruiting, and we'll stay right at the top with the elite of the elite. Number one quarterback, Faison Brandon, has locked in a couple visits. Steve, what's the latest here, and who are kind of the main players that are emerging?
Yeah, so Faison told me that his upcoming visit schedule begins with Tennessee on June 1st. Then he's going to get to Ohio State on June 10th. LSU is set for June 15th. Alabama June 22nd, and then Penn State July 27th. Look, we feel Tennessee is the early front runner. He's been there numerous times. Coach Halsey, Coach Heupel, he wants to continue building a better relationship with them. He says, every time I continue to go there, he learns more about how they develop quarterbacks, which is very important to him. He enjoys every visit he's had. Tennessee is the one that we point to setting the bar early. But there are several schools that he's high on, so we'll see how we feel after this wave of summer visits. You know, LSU is looking to land the number one quarterback for a second straight cycle. They have Bryce Underwood in the fold in 2025. They would love for Faison Brandon to come in and be the guy to push him and the guy who wins the job. You know, it's a hell of a quarterback competition. That's what you want. You want to get these elite guys in the room competing, and the cream rises to the top, and that's how you win national championships. You come there, you bet on yourself. Maybe you get a Jaden Daniels outcome, Heisman Trophy, and number 2 pick in the NFL draft is pretty damn good. But Faison Brandon, speaking of that, likes the way that they develop quarterbacks. He talked about the VR technology that LSU has, virtual reality. I've heard George McIntyre talk about that when he was going through his process. So LSU's got some cool tools that allow their quarterbacks to be their best versions of themselves. He had a really good visit to Alabama. He was offered during his Alabama visit in the spring. He likes the new coaching staff, what they did with Michael Penix, how competitive any team Kalen DeBoer's coaching. You're in the national title hunt, basically, with him in the corner office, the standard of Alabama. He likes the style of offense when he watched the spring practice. So Alabama, they're in a sneaky position for him. And I think we've talked about this before with some other guys, Josh. They don't have a 2025 committed. So I don't know how that's going to play out. Certainly they're trying to flip some guys, but if Alabama doesn't land a quarterback in the 2025 cycle, I think that's got to look real juicy for a 2026 quarterback to come in and kind of have that gap year between them and someone that they took from the high school ranks. Ohio State, you never count them out for a quarterback with what Ryan Day has done and what his offense looks like. And we've been talking about Penn State a lot, haven't we, with these elite quarterbacks? They're in the middle of it for everybody, and that's because of Coach Danny O'Brien. He's an electric recruiter now for them at that position, building meaningful relationships with all the top guys, and he's done that here with Faison Brandon.
All right, let's talk about another quarterback that just announced that he's probably coming off the board in the next 5, 6, 7 weeks. Diab Bell, American Heritage. He's the number 4 quarterback on the On3 industry. On3 likes him a little bit more. He's the number 2 quarterback here in our rankings. Now, we talked about Diab Bell yesterday on the Inside Scoop, and he's kind of starting to narrow it down. He says, quote, I feel like there are a couple of schools that have solidified themselves pretty well. Then there are some schools that I have to keep building the relationships with and see where that takes me with them. Now, to me, it might be a little bit too late if you got to make up ground on Diab Bell. If he's truly making his decision at the end of June, early July, Steve, who do you think the real players are for his commitment?
Well, I think in the beginning, I would have pointed towards Miami, I would have pointed towards LSU, and I would have pointed towards Penn State, and those 3 are certainly high on his list. I think Texas has definitely moved into the thick of this one. Chad Simmons, director of recruiting at On3, with the report yesterday that we're talking about today. The only visit that Diab Bell has scheduled right now is Texas for June 1. He had a fantastic time there, back in the spring. I talked with Diab Bell a little bit this morning about some of the best relationships that he has in college football right now. And he said, I feel comfortable with a bunch of guys. And it started with Coach Kotelnicki and Coach O'Brien at Penn State, then Coach Sloan at LSU, Coach Milwee at Texas, Coach Sheridan at Alabama. You got Will Stein from Oregon, Coach Chip Kelly at Ohio State, Coach Dawson at Miami. He loves that offense. And the one thing Dia said about Miami that stood out to me, the day Mario Cristobal was hired, it really jacked him up about Miami football and the direction, the way they were recruiting local guys, the chance to play with some guys that he's known for a long time. I think that visit he took to Texas in the spring was a major, major needle mover. He said he grew up an Ohio State fan. Again, Penn State's probably recruiting him as well as anybody. Yeah. So this is going to be a fun one to track going into the summer. He listed a lot of other coaches, man. So he's a guy that has kept a lot of schools warm, from Florida to Auburn to Tennessee, Mississippi State, SMU. So Diab Bell, his phone rings often and he takes those calls.
All right, we'll have to see if Diab Bell is truly ready to come off the board. It's not too far away. You guys let me know, comment section below. Where do you think these top quarterbacks are going to land